NADA 2025 New Orleans ACV Tec-Talks stage. What is the Tec-Talks stage? It's where we bring industry experts, dealers, people who know the industry that can help you make more money, sell more cars, and particularly we're going to talk about used cars with Darrell Steed.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure. This is an incredible event, so I look forward to helping people out and getting in the streets. So,
well, you're rising in popularity with your podcast and being online. Your celebrity apparel continues to grow. Really excited to have you here.
Well, it's great. Yeah, I made a goal to get dressed in the dark and just pull stuff out of the closet this time, so to see if we could match. But yeah, it's great. This year is kind of one of those interesting things. I've been really deep in it, working and doing what I do with acquisition. But this year I really wanted to educate, right? It was like a mission of like, let's talk about it. Let's give people more insights and ways to navigate this, because it's kind of been that industry of like gatekeeping.
Yeah.
Like we don't tell people about the secrets or the how to get better. And so I wanted to kind of be at least a voice of change for that. So that's kind of been really nice to see the audience and the engagement.
Well, it's good. And that's what NADA 2025 is all about, is learning, right? Everybody's here to try and grow their business, get more engagement, help your employees, and connect with your customers better. So let's jump into like used cars, because you know a little bit about used cars.
Yep.
And at ACV, we kind of live in that space as well.
You guys do a little used car
we do a little bit of used car activities. I noticed this year car sales are predicted, particularly used cars predicted to go up 1 to 2%, could be higher. Early on, before the year began, we heard a much higher number. Then it's kind of been bounced around a little bit. But I also have heard and seen data that supports it's going to be a scarce supply market this year. Mm-hmm. Actually more scarce than it was previous year, 2024, because we're now at the depth of what COVID brought us as a scarcity bubble. So what do you see happening? You have dealers, you work for a very successful group, but you also have dealers that come to you and ask you questions.
Yeah, so it's interesting you say it, because I saw some of those same studies that are like, oh, we're going to have an increase in sales. But oddly enough, then the next one came out with more data saying that there's going to be just short of 3 million less used cars available in the market, which I'm like, I don't know how we increase more with less, but this will be interesting. I think 2025 will be the hardest year for used cars in the last 5.
Yeah.
For 2 reasons. One, you have this scarcity, or what they anticipate to be, which they've been kind of spot on to scarcity as it's come out of COVID. So that means compression is going to get even worse. You're going to have to pay up, which in turn means your profit margins are squeezed, so you have to become more efficient. But the other thing that I don't think people have realized is, because of COVID and ownership getting longer, is the cars that are coming back in not only are older, but have significantly more miles, because people typically traded them in at a certain mileage band. And so I had a conversation actually earlier with a dealer, and it was the $10,000 car. The $10,000 car used to be 80,000 miles. It still had a couple years left on it. For $10,000, you're getting a car with 180,000 miles. You're hoping it lasts 2 years. So now it even takes that out of the equation of how much of the scarcity is also not ideal retail vehicles, because you're not used to that market. That's not the market franchises. Independents are more used to that, but franchises aren't like, oh, we have a lot of 180,000 mile cars that are, because it's not financing and it's not something people come in. So when you look at that, it's like, what are you doing? How do you acquire them? What are you doing for your exit strategy? Because now you either have to figure out a different retail strategy, or case in point, like ACV, which is a partner with a lot of the groups that I do, is you have to figure out an exit strategy so that you can be as effective as possible.
Yeah, very true, very true. I didn't think about that. You know, it's kind of interesting. To your point, franchise world, we oftentimes kept cars at like 80,000 or less back in the day. Then it kind of eked up to like 120 maybe on select cars. But now you do see a lot of cars with 150, 160 still being re-retailed. Not in huge quantity volume, but still being re-retailed. So to your point, if there's less cars, how much less is it of that one segment that's like pretty much at the end, this is the last transaction for that car. So that's a great point. What do you see dealers doing strategy-wise? I know, certainly we can talk about consumer acquisition and service lane. To your point, where are you going to get these cars? But let's start with consumer acquisition, because I know that has been a growing segment. Everybody woke up that there's some big industry players, big used car operators that have been just scooping those cars from customers for years, and now everybody's wanting to get in the game.
So that's kind of the interesting thing. So like when I talk to people, it's like I've been building buying centers since into 2010, 2011 was the very first one when the old school, to date ourselves, when trade-in marketplace first hit the market, which was before it was Kelley Blue Book and everything else. And back then it was like fishing with dynamite.
Yep.
You just made a call, it was done. Then some bigger players got into it, got really aggressive. And then now dealers, we're 14 years later into this, it's like AI or anything else. It's buying centers is this like trigger word. They're like, oh, I want a buying center. I want acquisition.
Yep.
But the interesting part about that is like they think it's just we can just kind of do it. Well, no, it's got to be a business model, because we're so used to, auctions was where you lived. And you could do that pretty effectively for the most part. And then trade-ins. Well, then as compression hits, used cars go lower.
Yep.
Now you have the private party strategy. Now service drive isn't something you go, we kind of do. No, it has to be forward focusing. But no one ever thought to, what does that look like?
Yeah.
How do you manage it? How do you measure it? And so that's kind of where I come in, is build that for them. And then you think to yourself, now we're even changing because everyone wants to get in, is the ones that got in early and had buying centers had a lot of success. You could acquire cars for a lot less, and you had more control of what was happening, but now everyone's doing it. So now there's more competition, or more noise. Maybe not competition, but at least noise. And when that happens, is like, now how do you become more effective in every other piece of your business? Your F&I, fixed operations, because the compressions keep tightening. Mm-hmm. And now you're starting to see even the ones with buying centers, it's taking a whole new iteration of, well, Darrell, we can't buy cars, or we can't get these cars for cheap. Well, if you didn't get those, where would you get them? And they're like, oh, we'd have to auction, or we'd have to do this. Okay, so why would you ever let a car leave if you would pay more at another source?
Good point.
So it gets into, now we're having to educate 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and now we're having to re-educate because we've evolved into a compressed market.
Yep.
Now, good news, I don't want to be the doom bringer, because we have seen a couple very difficult years, and I think this is the apex of it. I think this is where we're going to see the tip of the roller coaster ride, and then we're going to get some relief. I think 2026 is where it'll break free, because that's when cars started getting made again, the cycle. But you got to grind through this and build to be ready. If you think I'll just hope through 2025 and address it in 2026, everyone else will be ahead of you.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So that's kind of where I think things are now, and you have to really think about the full spectrum strategy, or the internal economy of your store, not just a piece.
Right. So it's got to be integrated into your actual process.
Yes.
Yep. Interesting. So when it comes to consumer direct acquisition, obviously there's lots of tools out there. ACV, we even have our own tool, ClearCar, that helps dealers acquire more cars from consumers. But there's lots of other tools to choose from. What do you see happening in that space? Because and kind of a fun thing, I was with a major dealer group recently, leave them unnamed, and we were having a really good discussion on this area. And they, like you just said, are trying to figure out how to do better at it. They've had to go through and choose a tool. They had to try and figure out, okay, now how are we going to get that to work with our new team, because they were building a new team, and then get that integrated into their operation as a department, like actually take it serious and make it a holistic thing. What are you seeing there? So
I mean, I think at this point of third party or validation type tools that are out there, there's got to be, we'll just safely say 20.
Yeah. Really? You think there's that many?
Because some of them are APIs of another thing, but like just different brands that are saying, hey, we provide a value.
Right.
I think dealers have to be really careful of like, okay, two things. One, how transparent is the tool to the customer? It doesn't matter what the dealer wants. You have to serve customers first. But two, and I know it's going to sound really juvenile, but all the studies have supported it, and I can tell you from 14 years of experience that it definitely supports it in real life. Do they have color? I know this sounds juvenile, but if you serve up a value that's in black and white, that's what it is. It's a piece of paper, and most of the time, because it comes from a dealer, it's not worth the paper it's printed on. Because of the trust factor. When you have color, and a lot of companies that have figured this out, you have the red, yellow, and green, or they have a version of a color spectrum.
Yep.
People identify and emotions come in when color's injected.
Interesting.
And so what you need to do is that's part of the validation so they can accept it. See, dealers have made a lot of missteps. I won't say mistakes because they change, or some of them change and adapt, is you're trying to figure out how it works for you rather than how the customer accepts it, how the customer ingest what they're seeing. When they see color, they can see, oh, red is bad, green is good,
Yeah.
some associations, and where do you fall into this? So for instance, I have clients that use ClearCar, which is a very fast system, but the color spectrum allows them to say, okay, this is where I fall.
Yeah.
But it's a point of starting the conversation.
Right.
And that's where I think that it goes to releasing control from a dealer, which I know what I just said is probably like heresy, is that you have to give up control. The ones that do actually end up making more money for their store.
Yep.
If I give a number as a dealer, and I don't care how great your brand is, I give a number to a customer, I want any dealer in the country to call me and then show me videos of a customer saying, yes, that was the best offer I ever got, and I accepted the first number. If that exists, I will fly to your store. I want to learn from you. I'm in.
Yeah.
We know that doesn't exist. It might happen one time out of 100. You cannot give a number from your dealership body and expect it to actually be a positive conversation for two reasons. One, we have conditioned the customer for the better part of 50 years to say no. Because every time they say no, we come back with more. So you did it to yourselves. Don't be mad. You caused your own problem.
Yep.
Number two, when a third-party number comes out, it doesn't matter who it's from. Pick a tool, but pick it and own it. Don't kind of do anything. When that number comes out and they don't like it, it has now opened up a conversation, if they think it's too low, where they came up with their number. We've earned the right to ask questions.
Yes, we have.
But if we give them a number and they think it's too low, we're having to defend our number.
Yeah.
You have to switch the whole paradigm of how this interaction happens. And that's where I think the tools become very effective if implemented, trained, and given the confidence to salespeople, managers, whoever's using them, to have the conversation. We have to switch that conversation back to where we can talk to people, not tell people.
Interesting. So give up control to gain a customer.
And profit.
And profit. Because when you get your customer, you got the profit.
And when you think about it, you give up control is if I said, okay, use any of these guys that say look to book or trade acquisition or efficiency is like you want it 20%, 30%, 40%, depending on how you measure it. If you could take in 5% more trades on any volume of sales you do, how much more money does that make to you? Well, we know there's big companies, yellow and blue ones, all these other ones that will give a number in 30 seconds. Yes, you need an inspection and everything else, but if you're not in that conversation with third-party validation, then you're left fighting against them rather than having a conversation about it.
Right.
And so when you give up that control, you actually now slowly, this is not going to happen overnight, release that stigma of the dealership of like, I don't trust that, or I think there's something to it. Like now they're saying, oh wait, we can have a conversation. Now we're open.
Yeah.
Now the conversation goes to this, it's not this, so we're changing that consumer experience to where now you get more trades. You get more trades, you get more service work. You get more service work, you get more customers. So you have to look at the 3 to 5 year plan. You can't look at today. And it's about building and evolving that.
Interesting. Those are all great advice. Great advice for those of you who are here at NADA 2025. Absent the snow today, it's getting better almost every day.
It's a little warmer, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of ice still out there here and there, but much better. So when you are working with dealers and they're trying to put together these inventory acquisition teams or even an individual, and they're using tools, what best practices? Because, again, for them, this is new. Now, you do some consulting on this, but what best practices would you recommend they do to build a successful acquisition department?
So, for me, it's always the same 3 things in every conversation. And we're going to go back to basics. So, if you like sports, blocking and tackling, okay, starting with the basics. If you like John Wooden, we're going to start with tying your shoe.
Yeah.
We've talked about that. Like, we start with tying our shoe. That's how we put it on. Yeah. What is your goal? In the sense of where are you going with this? Okay, we want to buy 20 cars, 30 cars, 40, whatever the number is. Okay, we need to have that clear goal. And what's the timeline of where we expect to be there? That has to be set out because when I do consulting, they're like, well, Darrell, we want to buy We want to buy as many as possible. That's not a goal. Like moving goalposts in this, you're doing something new. You need to have very finite things to like go after.
Yeah, target objectives.
So that we can measure success. Second is, please, and I beg everybody, do not have someone in your store train people to buy cars that have never bought cars, that have never dealt with private party. And this is why. You're going to go use tactics that you use in the sales world. Those aren't bad for sales. Okay, some are, some aren't. But you've never had this conversation, and the conversation tracks, the word tracks, the follow-up. It is completely different because they have everything you want, and you have nothing they need. So now you have no leverage. There's no point of equalization here. So you want to make sure that who's going to train it, who's going to implement it so that you can be on a solid foundation. Don't build on sand, build on concrete. And then third, which is probably the most important one, is what are you, we're buying everything? Or we're buying to select things? Like have a clear vision of like what you want to stock, what you're going after. And make sure it's a brand that is separate from sales. So these people don't sell cars. They don't do anything. All they do is buy cars. They're here to get you as much money, the best experience, and let that be the experience, because there are some companies that have said, hey, this is our focus, and oddly enough, they scoop up a lot of the business. So there's nothing wrong with mimicking something that has been proven to be very successful and doing it the way your particular brand or store wants to do it. You can have your own little spin on it, but it has to be customer first. It can't be dealership agenda. And so that's kind of what I tell people when I say, and you've got to find people, from the people aspect, the one thing I tell them is find people that when they hear no, they actually get revved up, because you're going to hear way more than you've ever heard as a salesperson. If you think getting told no as a salesperson's hard, as a buyer, you're going to make 100 calls and hear no 99 times. You're going to get one maybe, which is really a no. They were just being polite. And so it gets into that, every time you hear it, you just like a new challenge of how do I get the yes? How do I get the yes? How do I? And you want the people that go, almost have the chip on their shoulder, that go like, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't faze me.
Don't even hear it.
Yeah, it's like next opportunity, next opportunity, next opportunity.
Next word track.
So, and I think that's where you need to start, but you really need to have a methodology of, if you treated this like a business. I'm going to start it today. Okay, it's a primary focus. It's not a secondary objective. And I think some stores where you're seeing them try, not a big fan of that word because you can't try anything. You either do it or you don't, is they make it a secondary focus, but it's not a primary objective, which means that's the type of energy they put towards it. We sell cars and we kind of buy cars. If I said we 100% buy cars and it's more important than selling cars, it works every time.
Interesting. So when it comes to, you're a big advocate, obvious, on having separate departments, separate pathway. I would imagine start small and start building up. Compensation, and this is something I haven't asked anybody in a while, but compensation for these roles. So when I think about it, I think, okay, our salespeople we pay to sell a car. Now, it varies by state and how you do it, your company structure, et cetera. Most dealers don't actually have a compensation plan or know, or consistently know what's effective and how to pay their salespeople. And it should be a acquisition specialist, not a salesperson, buying that car. So what does that look like?
All right, so let's get really fired up here so that people, like, when they see this, they want to click on this. So let's start with your sales comp plans. They're wrong already. We pay salespeople on the result and not on the action. Well, the result is the end of all the actions. And I've never met a salesperson in my life that doesn't figure out how to work a pay plan to its fullest. So if our business objective is not aligned with our pay plan and it's only on the result, you'll never do enough actions to get the results you want. So with that being said, is that I would look and I consult to, let's look at your sales, but acquisition is, I don't ever suggest or consult people to pay on the result. And I hear this whole time, oh, every car they buy, we pay them 100, 200, 300, whatever it may be. Okay, great. And so if you hired someone and you didn't pay them hourly or you paid them a salary and they only bought 3 cars, were they effective or not? Now we leave it open to interpretation. But if I paid them on their activities and then tracked and can see the KPIs and then be able to say, oh, 100 calls, 50 emails, 50 texting, things of that nature, got us 1 appointment shown, which got us a deal, and then I can measure that, that's how you develop consistency. So all the pay plans I do is, hourly or a salary, something of that nature, and then it's going to be on appointment shows. And then on an appointment closed, but then you have to have reviews and testimonials because you're building a brand and you need that for validation down the road. So just doing the paperwork to buy a car because you paid the most, in all fairness, if you're just going to pay the most, I can do that with a lot of different tools.
Right.
When you talk about experience and building something I need them to be communicating and create an experience and getting people to my store, because what dealers should be looking at is for every appointment you drive in, or I should say if we do 10 appointments that come in to sell their car, over 60% of the time they will transact with you in a trade volume.
60%. 60% of the time.
So when you think about that is they just don't want to deal with the sales side first. They want to separate it because of what the industry has done to the trade cycle or how it works. So when they come in, you want them getting as many people to your store. So if the action is we need more people to our showroom, why is that not the bulk of the pay plan?
Good question.
And so that's what I look at is if we drive traffic to your store, and this is how I always tell every buying center. I hire a BDC person, they get 50 appointments to your store. They've lined them up. They've told them the initial offer, pending inspection. They've done all the things in the process. And you only bought 3 cars. Did they do their job?
They got them to the store.
So who didn't do their job? So we're not going to pay them because we only bought 3 cars, but they did everything you told them to do.
They got them to the store.
So you have a people process or problem, or you have an evaluation problem. You don't have a experience problem.
Correct.
That's where pay plans dictate, and the behavior will get you the results you want if the behaviors align.
Correct.
And so I really focus on aligning that with stores to get them the results they want, which is more good cars or more retailable cars. And then potentially more trades.
Interesting. So we go from pay plans to you got to get people to convert with the data, which means in this day and age, you got to show them the data first before they'll commit, they'll call, they'll maybe show up. However, whatever process follows, it's going to start with the data or the valuation of the vehicle.
The value of some kind.
Where should dealers sit there? And before you answer, there's a variety of values that come out of these solutions. Some of them are data-based and some are auction-based. Some are I'm not sure what they're based on, to be honest with you. I've looked at some, but there's a variety. It's quite a spread. How should a dealer approach that and interpretate that?
So this is where it gets really unique, and this is where dealers should get really fired up, is I've not met a dealer that does not like to have control of their profits or how their business is run. This is where you actually get some of the control, or at least the visualization of control is pick a value. If you want it wholesale, so if you use tools that do like wholesale values or auction values, pick the tool that you know, and I like to pick tools that align with your exit strategy, because why confuse the methodologies? Because then you're just, but this one said this, and you're like, but we use this to liquidate, so why are we doing that? But whatever number you give, I can tell everybody this. It doesn't matter what number you give. I know it sounds crazy. If it comes from third-party validation, you could give some, like you said, some of them come up with a number, you're like, that's retail. How'd they come up with it?
Right.
The first number you give to any consumer, it's too low. You will never hear from any consumer like, oh my gosh, that's way more than I thought I was going to get.
You don't think so, huh?
And if you do, I promise you, they only showed you the TV side of the car.
Yeah, right.
The other side's coming when you get there.
Yeah.
So when you know that it's going to be too low, you want the validation point of like, all right, so for instance, Clear Car, I have a group that uses that, and they use it very effectively. We're going to use the middle of the road, the number it gives us, and we say, looks like based on the market value from Clear Car, your value comes out at $17,128. And they go, oh, that's way too, I already know it's coming too low. It's going to start the conversation. Well, the good news is, and now you know that in most cases you'll pay more depending on the value. Once we inspect it, typically we're able to extend a higher value or a validated value. You need to start the conversation so you can find out what the real objection is.
Got it.
But if we don't give a number, or you say, for instance, there's a tool where you can just put a number in and then you put all kinds of things in the boxes and make it work to whatever you want, well, now becomes an issue is there's no consistency.
Yeah.
So that's what it comes down to. When you pick a tool or you pick a value with that for third-party validation, do it every time. Mm-hmm. Every day, every time, not a guideline. This is a process. Processes are black and white. Then you can go like this. All right, if that doesn't work, do we do this value plus 100, plus 200, plus 500? Because you can always levy up, levy down.
Yep.
But if you're like, well, we kind of evaluate this one for 90% of market, this one at 85% of market, this one 70. I don't even know what's working. So
Right.
you pick that tool, get the consistency, and start the conversation. The good news is you're never going to be too high in your first offer, because if you give them, and we tested this in the store, we gave out retail value for a week on every offer.
Really?
Because we just wanted to see, because everyone kept
See
telling
what
us,
would
like,
happen.
one, we got less responses, which was odd. And then the ones we did do, they said, okay, thanks, I'll let you know. They went back into their listing private party and raised the price. Because when they get that first number, they're going to shop you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't you? You
Sure.
would, I would.
Sure.
Like, you're going to see if that's the best value. So knowing that, start the conversation and then have the value proposition behind it. Why you?
Got it.
So there's pieces to this that you need to understand. And that's why it's different than sales.
Yeah.
Because if you're selling a new car, let's just use like Stellantis. Everyone's giving away a truck, or they're discounting them $10,000, $20,000. All you have is you now, but the price is already like, it is what it is.
Right.
This is one of one, so you can have a unique value conversation to it.
Interesting. Very good advice. Great advice for all of you at NADA 2025 here in New Orleans. Don't want to take too much of your time. Everything you've unpacked here is amazing. What if you had 3 things for this year? Because again, scarcity is going to be a concern this year, and we're right at the beginning of it. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. What would you tell dealers? What would be your advice to give to dealers to start doing now, and how to build into building a successful used car department with this strategy?
So I'd start with first, I mean, yeah, we'll call it a shameful plug for what I do, but you've got to retrain your people or train your people, however you interpret that.
Yep.
We've seen an exodus of talented sales and used car individuals in the business.
Yeah.
And then what talent we did have was kind of ruined by COVID because it was just too easy.
Yep.
I mean, you just stuck a stick in the wind and you like
You
everything.
got a set of car keys, you could sell
were
them.
good. And you could sell it for whatever price you wanted. So you need to invest in your people and education, because once they're empowered,
Yeah.
your profits come back because they're no longer scared of the conversation.
Yep.
So whether you're getting a training academy, you bring somebody in, it doesn't matter. Invest in your people, because that's your long-term strategy anyway. People always are. 2 is have a clear focus of, are you growing, maintaining, or surviving? And I would never say survive, like you need to be growing at all times, but at least maintaining is,
Right.
how are you attacking this, and what is your focus to it? Like, how much bandwidth are you giving to it? Because if you say, well, we're going to hire one guy to this, then it's not really a focus, is it? If
Nope.
you say, like, I'm going to get 2 or 3 cars, it's not.
Sounds like a closet
Like,
or a
you're
small
saying,
office
well,
somewhere.
we tried, or
Yeah.
we're doing, like, is it, if you really want to be in the used car game, be in it. There's plenty of people that, like, when they make that commitment to it, are doing very, very well. And they're not having to navigate some of the things. And then 3, which would probably be the biggest one, is stop worrying about what everyone else is doing. Okay, focus on what you want to do.
Yep.
It drives me bananas when I'm like, oh, you have a Ford store and a Ford store, and they go, well, that Ford store, do you have the same people? Do you have the same cars? Do you have the? Why are you competing against them?
Right.
What is your goal, and get to your goal.
Yeah.
Focus on you, and if it's acquisition, I want to buy 100 cars. Okay, who are you going to help you do it? Can you do it on your own, one or the other? How quickly do you want to do it? And then, because we're talking with you, and obviously I do a lot of business with my clients with ACV, because they're one of the better people to like exit strategy, is if you're going to then be in that acquisition game, you really do need to make sure that you have an exit strategy. And you have an exit strategy that, for dealers need to understand this, that can get your money the fastest. You can turn
Good point.
and turn it fast, because
Yeah.
if you don't, when you don't have capital, that compresses buying. So you need to have your exit strategy as efficient as your acquisition strategy.
And you're paying floor plan capital on that all the time along.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, with the rates on floor plan alone,
Yep.
that needs to turn as fast as
Yep.
possible.
Yeah, very true. Well, thank you, Darrell. This
I
has been
appreciate
great. The advice for everybody here at NADA 2025 show here in New Orleans. We're really grateful for your input and advice. Smartwolf Consulting, Darrell Steed, great person to reach out to. He's done great work at Knight Automotive Group and other groups. So really, thank you. Appreciate
I
it.
appreciate it. It's great being here, guys, and I hope all of you guys learn a lot of stuff while you guys are here.
Yeah, that's great.